than an out-group, which is always menacing because it's strange. They look different. They don't speak the way we do. They break the boiled egg on the narrow end instead of the broad end. This is going to go on forever, but when politicians seize upon these differences or these apprehensions,
particularly the religious differences,
and when they make religious differences the center of the political program, that's when the end is nigh.
Well, the end certainly felt a bit nigh when we met, as the war in Iraq was already well underway. So I asked Arthur why it was that skepticism is increasingly seen by many Americans as politically incorrect, as subversive, unacceptable, and of course unpatriotic. I get the impression that from the vantage point of Europe, for the last 18 months at least, and perhaps before, that atheism or disbelief or skepticism is seen by many Americans as politically incorrect, as subversive and unacceptable. Am I right in thinking that?
It's probably the case. They certainly, the religious overlay of patriotism has come into fashion. It's always there, of course, in this country. More people go to church here than I think anywhere. But it's gotten heavier now. They invoke God at any opportunity, whether it's buying an automobile or.
Do you think is that since 9/11, or do you think
it was always here, but it's gotten thicker, it's gotten heavier, because it's such an easy way to cuddle up to what they think the majority is about, which is this slavish kind of worship of something, and it's a political event.
But it is the first time for many years that you've had a government, a president.
Well, I don't recall it ever being the government itself doing this. It could have happened, but I'm not aware of it. I mean, I never heard of a government calling upon faith-based agencies taking care of the sick and the unemployed and the rest of it. Formerly, the government simply did these things as much as they ever did.
And one also gets the impression that the enterprise in Iraq had a sort of faith-based patriotism. It wasn't just patriotic,
right.
It was Christian patriotic.
Of course, in wartime, I suppose, we did that in the Second World War to a degree, but it was never laid on with a trowel this way. I think Roosevelt called upon God occasionally, but it didn't bother him too much.
Did you ever get the impression that although he called upon God, which he might have done, as it were, nominally, but did you ever get the impression that he was, in fact, a Christian beyond the call of duty?
He was not using it. This is now being used as a means of persuasion. It's patent, it's obvious. They call upon God to initiate a program, whatever it may be, a civil program of some sort. And they lard it over with some religious verbiage to make it seem as though if you oppose this, you oppose the Lord. There are a lot of Americans, I think they're a minority, but they're very vocal, are really aching for an Ayatollah. I think they would love to have a department of religion. We go back to the early 17th century, perhaps, and have a church, an official church. But they've convinced a lot of people to forget that this country was founded by people who were really escaping the domination of a governmental religion, and who breathed freely here with gratitude that they didn't have to obey a church government, churchly government.
But they then became as theocratic as the people that they left.
It seems to be something that has to be resisted on principle from one generation to another. At the moment, it's tougher than ever because the government itself is blatantly on the side of an official religion, I think. What is bothering me about the whole thing is that we're now more and more confronting a real issue in this country about the attempt of the religious, so-called religious, because I'm not sure they are religious. I think they're very nationalist people. Mm-hmm. And the wedding of Christianity or Judaism with nationalism is lethal, in my opinion. If you look at every violent conflict in the world now is being led by priests, rabbis, or Muslim clerics. It's quite amazing. I wonder whether it ever happened or whether it's happened in hundreds and hundreds of years. It's the church militant in all these religions. They've moved in, they've added that lethal mixture of religion and nationalism to the programs that they sell, and the reason it's lethal is because to believe in a religion means that you don't believe in a different religion. You can't believe in two religions. You got to believe in one, and the other ones are wrong.
And often to be destroyed.
And deserve to be combated and destroyed. I mean, it's implicit in the whole idea of religious belief, I think, in the normal way that religious belief is thought of. You can't be both a Catholic and a Protestant.
Well, and now there seems to be this, what would previously have been almost inconceivable, this unholy alliance between fundamentalist evangelical Christians in the United States and Orthodox Jews,
yes,
who are combining to support the
Christian zealots believe that Christ will return when the Jews become Christians. This news is going to come with a shock to most of the Jews that hear it. But that's the program. That Armageddon comes, at which point the Jews become believers in Christ, and Christ returns, and we're off to the races. It's pretty heady stuff.
And it's become particularly virulent in the last almost 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's a form of intellectual bankruptcy, which is, I think, it's taken over a lot of the political space.
Well, although he's considerably older than I am, I think it's fair to say that neither Arthur Miller nor myself could be described as spring chickens, so it seemed reasonable to ask him what he felt about the prospect of a life after death.
Everything I say, which is very skeptical, if not worse, is conditioned by one thing, and that is we don't know where life started or how. Nobody really knows that. And death is the end of consciousness is the awesome mystery that anybody who's lived at all knows he has no answer to. The idea that that consciousness could vanish, be no more, is unacceptable. It simply cannot. I have no way of accepting this.
Well, now, in your refusal to accept it, are you tempted to assume that in some mysterious way that it continues after some sort of, as it were, vacation?
That's right.
That it will resume somewhere?
That's what I find myself hoping.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And then I think, well, it does continue in art. and that the artist finally leaves us with his consciousness.
So that your work will outlast you. But do you feel, in any way, do you feel tempted to believe or hope that in addition to the work in which your memory will be preserved, that you yourself, in some alternative version, unembodied, will continue to exist and be conscious?
I no longer can contain that idea, no. But for others, for instance, my wife of 40 years died about a year and a half ago. And I'm surrounded by all her stuff of her life. And the idea that she's not here is still defeats some impulse to recreate her. But I know what that impulse is. It's simply the inability to accept this absurdity, that all that consciousness and all that beauty simply isn't there anymore.
And you don't, as obviously as believers do, Christians perhaps more than Jews, that there will be some sort of rendezvous.
No, this is beyond me. I don't have that at all. I don't believe it. I think, as I said, if there is memory, because what we're talking about is a form of remembrance. If there is that, it's in the deeds that one did, or the art that one created, or some cases perhaps in the children, but no more.
So you can't, as I can't, make sense of the idea of a continuing consciousness which outlasts the death of the body, in which that consciousness would, as it were, identify itself as being...
Wouldn't it be lovely?
Well, do you think it would be lovely?
Well, of course, there'd be so many of us. It'd be a rather crowded area. I think it'd be like the subway at 5 o'clock in the evening. You'd wish you could get off, I think.
But in addition to, as it were, the population problem,
the urge is always there, I think. The urge to preserve this thing. And if you're not careful, I suppose you could venture into everlasting life. But as I said earlier, death is the ultimate perplexity. And particularly, not the body so much as the consciousness. The ability to observe, to talk, to store up images, which is, we spend 60, 70, whatever many years accomplishing. And in a breeze, it blows away. I think we're stuck with the earth and with the lives we've got. And the immortality notion is simply past my capacity to really believe in. I never could figure out what we Jews believe about an afterlife. I have the feeling that it doesn't quite exist. It's a skeptical area.
Well, I'm always told by people who know or seem to know that it's not altogether different from a seminar at Columbia, that you in fact go to Moses, you enroll, and Moses teaches you to infinity the finer points of the law. Which
There's
seems
no
like,
way out of it.
But that seems like locking the stable door after the horse has bolted.